What just happened? Just 2 games into the 2024 season, Bryce Young has shockingly already been benched. From the first overall pick just a year ago to the Panthers already giving up on him, how bad has he been? The Panthers have scored 13 total points in their first 2 games. The team is an abject disaster. Today we'll dive into what's gone wrong, why his height is actually that impactful, and why Carolina felt they had no choice but to bench him. To start, defenses know he's a very limited quarterback in terms of height, arm strength, mobility, really any of the key categories. Young is not up to par, so this leads to a main issue. Defenses play the Panthers differently than most other quarterbacks. The Saints knew they could play press coverage and keep the safety super low, just 12 yards off the line of scrimmage. So even when the Panthers run what is basically a gimme against one high safety, especially when the defense is playing man coverage, the very first play of the Panthers season foreshadowed their problems. Drift is a day 1 install concept for every team. Adam Thielen runs a clear out to keep the safety out of the way, then Deontay Johnson runs a quick 5-step dig route that breaks into the open middle of the field. Young uses play action to get the linebackers to suck up, but because the Saints can play super tight man coverage since they aren't scared of the receivers, or Young, because the safety is low because he's not scared of getting beat over the top, Young has to try to squeeze the throw in, and he airmails it. His main issue, his height, is a key reason why this play failed and why he got benched. But before we dive deeper into Young's film, I want to thank this week's sponsor, SeatGeek. With the NFL season fully underway, SeatGeek is my go-to app for buying tickets to whatever I want to do. If I'm hitting a Cubs game, when I'm driving to Indy for Finn's Colts, anything I can think of, anything you can think of, SeatGeek has tickets to it, and it's gonna be awesome. I prefer them because they rate the deals for each game based on the best deals for each seat. A green dot is a good deal, red means it's not so good. So I pop it open on days, weeks, usually an hour before the game or concert or whatever I'm trying to go to. Find me a green dot, and I am there. Every ticket is backed by their buyer guarantee, and what I really love about them, no matter how many times you use SeatGeek, you can always use my code Rollins10 to get 10% off your next order, and every order in the future, that's Rollins10 for 10% off all orders. One of my main issues with the way Young plays the game is how he has to compensate for his lack of height and what it does to his footwork. Typical drift footwork has the quarterback loading up on his final step, then pushing his momentum forward so all his body weight and mechanics can be flowing towards the receiver. However, we can literally see that once Bryce gets to the top of his drop, he takes an extra hitch to get on his tippy toes. And yes, this is the first time in the 5 years I've done this channel I have said tippy toes, which rushes and ruins his mechanics. If your brain is telling you to throw before your body is ready, you'll rush your motion, forcing you to release it high, and then the ball gets intercepted. His footwork's always been an issue that's never talked about enough, and worse yet, has never been addressed. He's more one to meander backwards instead of shooting back to get to his spot, so he then can't regain momentum back towards his receiver. He doesn't turn his shoulders parallel to the sideline like every other quarterback. Because he's so small, he has to see as much of the field as he possibly can. Then at the last second, he takes a hitch to get up on his tippy toes, making it so he has to rush his mechanics once again, which leads to him sailing the ball. Without good footwork, you can't have good pocket presence, which is one of Young's biggest weaknesses. He's constantly breaking the pocket despite being an, at best, average athlete, but because he can't see and because he doesn't want to get hit, he leaves the pocket quicker than Diddy runs out of baby lotion. This means he actually creates sacks, which naturally enrages his teammates because it looks like they're not doing their job. The Saints send this fire dog blitz, and the Panthers do a really good job of picking it up. The interior offensive line muddies up the stunt, the 2 tackles get pushed back a bit, but still maintain the integrity of the pocket. And running back Miles Sanders maintains that integrity by blocking the nickel corner Alontae Taylor towards the outside. But you can see what happens with Young's slow, drifting drop. Instead of the definitive 3-step where he's purposefully pounding his feet into the ground so he can then move back up into the pocket, he's still drifting, takes a step back instead of forwards, and creates a sack. Sanders is pissed. With the entire organization on your shoulders every play, you can't create sacks because that hurts the offensive line, the receivers, the defense, all the coaches. Everybody is affected. They all look bad because of you. The poor footwork affects accuracy too. To be an accurate quarterback, you need easily repeatable mechanics, which includes footwork. But watch how once again he's slowed to the top of his drop, then is kind of falling backwards as he releases. I liken throwing the ball to throwing a punch. If you were punching somebody right in front of you, would you have all your momentum going through your punch, or do this flimsy falling back thing that Bryce is doing here? Another aspect that's killed the Panthers' offense are his struggles properly setting protections and directing traffic. Once you understand the basics of football, a lot of it is pretty simple. For example, you can see Austin Corbett wanting to slide to his left for the 4 Saints, but Young convinces him to slide right. This is a problem, because with Corbett tied up with Bryce, the Panthers have 2 blockers for the 4 here. Sometimes football is as simple as 2 is less than 4. Yet Young doesn't fix the protection, one of the Saints falls off, but even still, Alontae Taylor again easily sacks Young for his 2nd of the day. Taylor actually finished with 3 sacks in the game, an unreal season for a nickel cornerback, let alone 1 single game. Dude was on pace for 51 sacks after this one, but in my opinion, all 3 were on Young. His poor footwork also makes him struggle to read the field and anticipate open space. If you're still in your drop when you shouldn't be and are creating extra movement, your eyes are going to bounce around too, making it harder to see what's going on downfield. This can affect longer developing concepts, where if you're leaving the pocket too quickly, you don't know what's going to come open later in the down because your eyes have already dropped and you're already scanning to see what you have to run by. So then defenses don't respect your passing attack down the field, they move up, and everything snowballs and caves in on itself. When you can't read the field, but you know you have to push the ball deeper, you start to guess when somebody's going to come open. So instead of taking what the defense is giving you, like this curl at the bottom here, you're pushing the ball into windows that aren't there and forcing unnecessary mistakes on 1st and 10. Young was supposed to be a distributor, the point guard type like we talked about last week with Caleb, but without being able to see, without being able to play with timing, Young has struggled to be the type of quarterback he was supposed to become in the NFL. Here the Chargers are playing 2 high safeties and look to be in some sort of cover 4 quarters with 4 deep, or cover 2 zone with the corners playing the flats. The Panthers have this deep out option concept where Deontay Johnson runs off the coverage and then Thielen is supposed to break outside away from the defender. But if the cornerback is playing cover 2 and sitting underneath, Young has to quickly recognize that and come off the concept, then work the other side. However, even though the cornerback stays flat, and it doesn't help that Johnson stalls out and doesn't run him off, Young doesn't eliminate this concept quickly enough to get back to his check down on the other side. This is the next level of quarterbacking that he has not shown he is capable of. I will say not everything's been his fault. The pass protection has been pretty good, but the receivers have definitely struggled to consistently get open. Adam Thielen himself said this is an offensive team issue, not a Bryce Young issue, and on film there are plenty of times where he drops back and there's simply nobody open. His receivers aren't creating the necessary separation. The Panthers' offensive skill players are just not dynamic enough to help a rookie quarterback complete passes and gain confidence. However, I do believe Thielen was ultimately trying to protect Young, because a lot of this, not all, is most definitely his fault. Bryce Young has already been benched just 2 weeks into the season because he showed that he could not operate an NFL offense. With his physical limitations proving too much to overcome, his height makes it so he simply can't see what typically heighted quarterbacks see, This affects his footwork, his anticipation, his vision, and his development. The Panthers felt like they needed to make a change because Young just can't do it. And while I agree that he seemingly can't, I'd still keep him out there for a bit longer and at least try and figure out how to scheme up my subpar receivers who aren't creating separation. It was always a dicey proposition having Young be the #1 overall pick because of his physical limitations, but there were reasons he was drafted there. If he can grind it out, hold his head up high, and still do the work week in, week out, day in, day out, Bryce Young can hopefully turn his career around.